housekeeping before we started. So again, like I said, we're excited that you have joined us. We have some amazing speakers that are going to be presenting information today. Looking forward to hearing all the good things that they're going to impart to us. I do want to share a little bit about the association itself. So this association is the Methodist Girls High School All Girls Association of Ontario, Canada. We comprise of about 15 phenomenal women who are looking to leave an imprint in our community. Our focal goal is supporting the girls in Sierra Leone, the Methodist girls at the Methodist Girls High School. But this time we decided that in order to help build our brand, we were going to launch this event to educate our community. We believe that when the community is strong, it empowers them to be able to do more work back home to give us the support that we need from them. So on that note, we are going to get started. I'll just explain how things will work. The room will be muted. So the presenters do have the ability to mute or unmute themselves if they think, when it's time for them to present, but the room will be muted. After the presentation is done, we do have breakout room sessions. So if you have a question that you believe demands one-on-one consultation with one of these experts, we invite you to make your way to a breakout room where you can pose the question. That will run for 30 minutes. At the end of the presentation, all of this information that you will hear today will be launched on our website. You do have the ability to go back to the website, review the slides. If you choose to make an appointment with any one of these experts, you will also have the opportunity to do so. So on that note, I forgot. We are going to have one break. It's not going to be a very long break, but you are more than welcome to step away if you need to grab a glass of water, if you need to. I promise that we'll record the session so that way you can go back and listen to any of the useful information that you might have missed. So on that note, I am going to call our first presenter. There is a lot I can say about this woman, but in the essence of time and for family discord, we're going to move ahead. She happens to be my phenomenal sister, Dr. Fiona Strasser-King. Fiona is an assistant professor in the Department of Internal Medicine at UT Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas, Texas. Her areas of interest are health disparities, cardiovascular disease in global health, and cardiovascular imaging. Dr. Strasser-King is also a veteran of the United States Navy, where she served as a hospital corpsman. She also serves as an adjunct professor in the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Sierra Leone. So ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I want to bring Dr. Fiona Strasser-King. Welcome, Fiona.
Thank you, Francetta, for your kind introduction and for not sharing any of the family secrets that will embarrass both of us. I'm going to share my screen now. And you forgot to mention that I am also an alum of the Methodist Girls High School, graduated in, I think, 1985?
1990.
1990? Okay, I don't remember. Thank you. It's a good thing you're here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. You're good to go.
All right. Thank you guys for allowing me to participate in this health fair, and I hope that we can share information that will be useful to the community and that you can also share with your communities. So, as Francetta mentioned, I'm a cardiologist at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas, and I love health disparities and cardiovascular health, and also cardiovascular health in women, especially during pregnancy. So this talk, brief outline, since I was only given 15 minutes to have this conversation, we'll talk briefly about cardiovascular diseases among Black women, because that's the majority of the population we're speaking to today. Common risk factors that are unique to women in cardiovascular health, and also what part can you play in minimizing your risk and ensuring that if you do have cardiovascular disease, to minimize the progression of the disease. So some fun facts, quote unquote fun, because they're really very serious facts. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women all over the world, most of the world. I did not include all in my slide because we still have a paucity of data in lower middle income countries like Sierra Leone, there is no robust research to see exactly what the prevalence of the disease is. But in many countries in the world that have similar demographics, cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer. Unfortunately, the incidence of this disease is actually rising in women and affecting women at a younger age. So we're seeing a lot of women in their 30s, 40s developing significant coronary disease or cardiovascular disease who are in teen intervention. And unfortunately, the mortality rate among women with this disease is actually quite high. And that's, for a few reasons. A lot of times women don't pay too much attention to the symptoms they have. And women also might have a little bit of atypical presentation if they're having, say, for example, an acute myocardial infarction or heart attack. So women may have just abdominal pain, shoulder pain, back pain, and not the classic elephant on the chest pain that men usually have. And as the rates of uncontrolled diabetes rises in the population, we find that women also can have silent heart attacks, because what happens when diabetes is uncontrolled, it affects the nerves in the body and the blood vessels. And these are the structures that alert us that something is wrong, right? So if you cut yourself and you have pain, you realize that something is wrong. So when the nerve endings don't work very well, then women may have a heart attack, or even men, and not realize that they're having an MI, a heart attack, because those nerve cells have been damaged by the high blood sugar that diabetes brings. So it is very important to recognize that women also have heart attacks. Their mortality rates are higher actually than men, because women present to the hospital with atypical symptoms and they're not taken as seriously. So if you have a suspicion that this might involve your heart, when you get to the hospital, you need to advocate for yourself and say, I think I am having a heart attack, so that your care may progress quicker and also help minimize the poor outcomes that we see in women. So as far as data, this is a chart from the American Heart Association, and it describes the deaths related to cardiovascular disease over a period of about 10 years. So in 2008, which is the gray boxes, this describes how many Black patients died. It describes of all the patients in the world, or in the country who died from cardiovascular disease or associated complications of cardiovascular disease, how many of them were Black. And we can see that in the gray cell, which is in 2008, about 32% were Black, non-Hispanic Black, compared to non-Hispanic whites, Native Americans, Hispanics, and other. So the mortality rate in 2008 superseded that of any other race in the country. Overall, we can see 10 years later, that still remains true. More Black people die from cardiovascular disease than any other group in this country. What is reassuring is that the overall trends of mortality, of death related to cardiovascular disease is actually coming down. But again, as everybody's rates is coming down, Black patients tend to do worse related to this disease. Okay. So these are just the facts that we have available. And this is also a chart from the American Heart Association. This was actually published, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, that showed that about 83 million Americans have heart disease. Of those, right, 47% of those were Black women, or self-identified Black women, or African American females. So African American females have the highest prevalence of this disease in the United States. Also, Black patients in general have the highest mortality from this disease in the United States. I hope I have driven this point home, that this is a disease that is very common among Black people, higher in Black women, who have higher mortality rates, who do poorly because of many different things, which we'll talk about. One being that they do not always recognize the symptoms that they're having a heart attack, and two, when they present to healthcare facilities, they may not be taken as seriously as if it was a man who was presenting with similar symptoms. So what are some of the risk factors that are unique to women in cardiovascular disease? Well, we do know there's very well established risk factors. Now I'll start with that. This is very common to men and women: hypertension, poor diet, obesity, especially abdominal obesity, visceral fat along the abdomen, sedentary lifestyle, high cholesterol, diabetes, and smoking and tobacco use. These are well-established risk factors for this disease, common to everybody in the world. So one thing that was not included here was family history, especially among men. If there's a family history of heart disease in the family, especially at younger ages, it tends in the 40s or 50s, and it tends to run in families. So if you have a significant other, a friend, sibling who is at risk from a family history, they should be more vigilant in minimizing their risk factors for this disease. Some specific factors unique to women for cardiovascular disease is early menopause, gestational diabetes. Right? This is diabetes women have when they're pregnant that does not always continue once the baby is delivered. It may sometimes continue because these women are also at risk of having diabetes even when they are not pregnant. Women who have hypertensive disorders of pregnancy, like preeclampsia or eclampsia, are also at risk of having long-term cardiovascular disease. Women who have preterm labor, women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a syndrome manifested by insulin intolerance, which increases the risk of having diabetes, hence also cardiovascular disease. And also women who have some autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, Sjogren's disease. All those things increase the risk for cardiovascular disease in women. So those are the sex influences. Some of the things that are harder to predict because they're very subjective are some of what we call unrecognized risk factors, right? Psychological risk, abuse and intimate partner violence, socioeconomic deprivation, poor health literature, environmental risk. These are all of the factors that increase the risk that women encounter, right? It's more stressful for a woman living in an unhealthy or abusive relationship, and that increased stress also increases her risk for cardiovascular disease. Women who are emotionally abused, verbally abused, anything that will increase the risk, will increase the level of stress, also can manifest in higher risk of cardiovascular disease. Women, especially in low middle income countries, who are more exposed to cooking, we cook with wood instead of coal, or that smoke, the biofuel that we use produces all this smoke and toxins, that because we are the ones cooking regularly, so we are more exposed to these toxins, and those are actually cause a lot of problems in our blood vessels that can increase our risk for cardiovascular disease. And these have all been well documented in studies in low middle income countries. Poor health literacy is always interesting for me. Poor health literacy has nothing to do with somebody's education, meaning because somebody has a PhD does not mean they're health literate. So this health literacy refers more to how do people understand their risk for health and how health impacts their life. So you can have, I know we have a lot of old wives' tales growing up, right? Or you shouldn't do this because this will happen to you. And some of those sayings, parables, practices that we grew up with actually have some basis. But these were told by mostly uneducated, as far as scholastic education, women. These are great grandparents who never had opportunities to go to school, but they have practices that somehow are based on science. And these are women who are more health literate probably than the people who had PhDs. So that's just my soapbox I like to get on once in a while. So the risks that we talk about for heart disease, we've mentioned some of those unique to women, but I want to highlight the most common ones that we can actually manage. One is blood pressure. Hypertension is a huge risk for developing cardiovascular disease. I have had many people of many races tell me that I don't have any symptoms. My blood pressure is high, but I have no symptoms, therefore I am fine. That is not true. Blood pressure, elevated blood pressure is actually quite dangerous, right? Normal is less than 120 systolic, over 80 diastolic, and I will encourage everybody to know their numbers. When you go to your doctor next time, or if you go to the pharmacy that has a blood pressure machine, or you go to Walmart, go check your blood pressure so you know what your number is. The best way to do this is to sit down for about 5 minutes, completely relax, and then do your blood pressure ideally on both arms. And that is your number, which I think we all should know. Because if you fall within the normal range, then nothing to do, you can carry on. If your blood pressure is elevated, we usually recommend lifestyle modifications, eat healthy, exercise, cut back on the sodium, salt intake, okay? If you fall within the high blood pressure group, for me, anything below elevated requires either it requires for sure lifestyle modification and or medications, okay? So knowing your number helps you know where you fall and what steps you need to take to get you back to the green. So high blood pressure is a huge risk factor, especially among Black people, right? And we're still trying to understand why it is such a huge, it's so hugely prevalent in this group and what we can do to minimize our risk. So other stressors, right? Risk factors for heart disease other than high blood pressure, again, quality of sleep, right? I know that's hard for most of us. We have to work a lot, but we have to take time to have good quality sleep, good sleep hygiene. Don't have a TV in your room. Turn it off when you go to bed. Make sure you have uninterrupted sleep. Healthy body weight is important. Exercise is very important. And you don't have to go to the gym and work out, an hour. The recommendations are 10 minutes of aerobic exercise 3 times a day and do that 5 days a week. So if you're working at home, you get up from your chair and you walk around fast paced, you do some jumping jacks, you do sit-ups for 10 minutes and you go back to work and do this 3 times a day. And if you do that 5 days a week, that equals about 150 minutes of exercise, which can have a tremendous impact on reducing your risk for cardiovascular disease, okay? Walking around the block where you live a couple of times a day, and if you have a dog, walking the dog, these are the things that you can do that will actually, it doesn't matter how old you are, these are very effective methods. Healthy diet is important. We all like fufu, not good for us, eh? So I think we need to figure out how we can still enjoy some of our meals, but modifying it so they are healthier. If you smoke, quit smoking. There is no halfway through on this one. Tobacco use is detrimental to your cardiovascular health. Salt is dangerous. It is poison for our blood vessels. The recommendation for people who do not have hypertension is 2 grams of salt a day. That's 1 teaspoon. And that includes your food, the chips and the dips, everything you eat that has sodium should be no more than 2 grams a day. If you have high blood pressure, it's actually 1,500 milligrams a day, which is 3/4 of a teaspoon. So these are things that I think we have to pay attention to. Unfortunately, Black women, Black people in general are very sensitive to salt. So anything we can do to minimize our salt intake will reduce our blood pressure and hence reduce our risk for cardiovascular disease. And this is just another slide, just reiterating some of the lifestyle and medications. I don't know why there's a lot of resistance in our community to taking medications. I tell people, if we have a disease, we have a medication that can help manage the disease we should take our medications. I know it is tedious to be taking medicines every day, but these are things that we have to do to minimize our risk of having bad outcomes. Okay. All right, I don't think I have anything else to add. I am happy to be in the breakout session, happy to have further discussions and provide guidance as I am able. And I really appreciate you guys inviting me, and I appreciate you taking time to listen to what I have to say. And honor before honors. And for all the haters from Annie Walsh, we don't care. That's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
She had to put that in there. So thank you, Dr. Fiona. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule today to share the good words that you've just imparted. I know you are definitely a beacon for me. You're always pouring me, cussing me out, but I love you nevertheless. So the next presenter we're going to have come on board also happens to be one of my family members. Doreen is my cousin. She is a psychotherapist with a background in crisis and clinical mental health. She has worked with couples and individuals with a wide array of concerns, including depression, anxiety, relationship issues, life transitions, career challenges, as well as physical trauma and/or emotional abuse. She believes in treating everyone with respect and meets or works with her clients where they are. Her approach combines cognitive, behavioral, existential, and person-centered. Doreen is a phenomenal lady. Definitely not ever a boring day around her. And I have her on speed dial for my mental health. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring Doreen Jacobs to the forefront for everybody. Welcome, Doreen.
Thank you, Montetta. Before I start, I want to say I did not go to MGHS. I am a Conventonian, so this precedes everything I do. Esto Fidelis. Moving on.
Doreen,
Okay.
Can you increase your volume a little bit, please?
Let me try 1 second. Can you hear me now?
It's a little bit better. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit
Is
more.
it getting better?
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I said before was, before I proceed, I did not go to MGHS. I'm a Conventonian, so Esto Fidelis. We rule. Okay. Today I'm here to talk to you all about our minds. Obviously, as Francesca said, I work in mental health, and I do know from experience, personal and professional, that a lot of Sierra Leoneans and West Africans and Black people in general do not like to seek support for their mental health for various reasons, which we'll cover as we go along. So I'll start with the definition of. Thank you. So if we go to slide 2. Thank you. So I'll start with the definition of mental health. According to the World Health Organization, someone who's mentally well can realize their potential, cope with normal stresses, and contribute to the community in a productive way. Mental health is about physical, mental, and social well-being. There is some confusion about mental health and mental illness. So mental health is a state of emotional well-being. Mental illness can be classed as diagnosed conditions that affects their thoughts and behaviors. So if you look at it in the form of a continuum, your mental health, the symptoms that you experience when you have mental health challenges can escalate into mental illness. So for example, if someone is suffering from low moods and they don't deal with it, or they don't seek support or go to the GP, the low moods will escalate and sort of take over their entire lives. So by the time they get to the doctor or the hospital or the GP, they might end up with a diagnosis for depression. So once again, your mental health challenges can escalate into a mental illness diagnosis. Okay, so common mental illness diagnosis would be major depressive disorder. So that's depression in many forms. Depression can also be postpartum. It can be psychotic. It can be persistent, as in it lasts for 2 years. And the new trend we're seeing is that we've got a lot of depression that is linked to PMS. It's called PMDD. Um, Other conditions that are common will be anxiety disorders, and there's obsessive compulsive disorder, which is OCD, and there's bipolar, which is a combination of manic depression and the low mood. So when someone's in a manic phase, everything's elevated, they do things faster, they have these I call it grandiose ideas. They can conquer everything, they can handle everything, but then you see them probably a few weeks later and they're in the depressive state, and you'd be like, so what happened? One week they were up and about doing, being Superman, and then the next week they're almost comatose. The risk factors for a mental health, there are many. Many situations, circumstances, and interactions impact our mental health. And I prepared a list. I won't go through all of it, but I'd go through some pertinent ones that I think would help us. The first one is genetic predisposition, the family history of mental health. I'm sure a lot of us, we know what we know, or we have heard of them people are where they ain't no steady. We've seen it where, people in our community, for quote unquote, they don't act right. And the story goes that, oh, their mother was like that, or their father was like that, or they had a family member like that. So they generally have a history of mental illness or health conditions in their family, and it just passes down the generations. Another popular one that I see a lot is excessive interpersonal conflict at work or at home. Our relationships cause us a lot of stress, and if we don't deal with it, we'll end up with challenges such as anxiety, depression, feelings of low self-worth, helplessness, hopelessness, despair. Another one that we see, especially in the UK, is loneliness and lack of support systems. So because of logistics and where we have to live and where we have to work, a lot of us are not connected with our support systems or the community, and we're alone. A lot of people struggle with being alone. If you think about how we were raised in communities back in Freetown, or anywhere that you grew up in Sierra Leone, you will always have some family member within a certain radius of where you live. So we used to being in communities, and now we move abroad, we find ourselves alone, and it can become stressful. It can take a toll because we lack connection with those we love and what we're familiar with. Another common one is unemployment, because it is scary and it induces a lot of stress, financial, emotional, otherwise. There's excessive work demands and workload. So this is a big one for us because, we're grinders. We work hard. And a lot of times, because we are grinders, we work so hard, we don't take time out to sleep properly. So sleep impedes our judgment. And if we make too many mistakes, we start wondering whether or not we can actually cope with stuff. If we don't deal with those thoughts properly, we actually start doubting what we can do. And that in itself, the fear of the unknown or fear of what we can and cannot do, can be classed as anxiety. And then I'll move further down the list to mental health stigma. So the problem with this one is quite big. So Francis, if you can take me to the next slide, please. Thank you. Stigma in our community, the way I understood it, is in two forms. One is towards others. So we view people with mental health challenges or illnesses in a negative way. That person may not all right to not go near and too much. Because of our actions and I wouldn't call it ignorance, I'd call it lack of information and awareness. We are known. Sorry, we do make other people feel ashamed of their mental health challenges or feel that they're less than the rest of us. Stigma also leads to discrimination, as outlined above, and it actually makes the person's mental health challenges worse because we discriminate against them, we don't go near them, so they end up isolated. That's not good when you struggle with mental health. Isolation is one of the biggest killers that we have seen. People who are isolated do not have any source of support, or they believe they don't have any source of support. And then they tend to run with their thoughts. There's no one to challenge their thoughts, there's no one to inject perspective. And they believe their thoughts to the point where they actually think it's their reality. And a lot of times, when someone struggles with mental illness that's undiagnosed, untreated, and unsupported, they tend to go with what they're feeling, or in some cases, they hear voices. They tend to act on what the voices tell them to do. The other part of the stigma is our mindset, the way we have been raised to think. We struggle, a lot of us struggle in secret. We struggle to tell people how we feel. We struggle with whether or not people will then tell other people how we feel. We're raised with the give the world the sunshine, tell messages of the rest. So we'd rather struggle in secret or just not tell anyone. Or sometimes, some people, as my mother used to say, if you dig a hole and say the secret, then well, at least you told something. So we do everything but seek support. And then the last part is our own definition of and perspective of mental health. So when someone has mental health challenges, it means they're struggling. It means that things are not right. It means they have issues that they need to address it, and they're not coping with it. It does not mean that they're ill. It does not mean that they are crazy. It basically means that they need some place to go talk about what they're feeling and thinking and get perspective, right? One of the best places to do that is to go to your GP. So if we have any British people, so I work predominantly in England, so I refer to England a lot, sorry. If we have any British people in the audience, you go to your GP and tell them how you feel. They might make a referral to a mental health professional or to talking therapies where you can get an assessment, and they'll take you from there. For my Canadian counterparts, because I live in Canada most of the time, one of the things first step, if you are employed with EAP benefits, if you look through your benefit list, you might find social work or counseling in there. Call the helpline, speak to them about what's going on for you. They'll make a referral, they'll do an assessment and make a referral as they see fit. If you do not have EAP benefits, each town actually has a mental health crisis line. It is free. It's not anonymous per se, but you don't necessarily they don't push you to give all your details. They provide information, support, and they'll signpost you to other places where you can get help. Worst case scenario, you can also speak to your family physician. They will probably try to refer you somewhere else, or if they see fit, they might actually prescribe you medication. Francis, I need you to scroll down to the medication slide for me, please. It's slide number 12. Okay, so a quick word on medication. So medication comes in the forms of antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and mood stabilizers, and different combinations there within. Just because a doctor prescribes medication does not mean you are crazy. Sometimes mental illness needs medical treatment. For example, if someone is struggling with depression and they haven't been able to get themselves out of bed for a few days, or they struggle to just get going in the morning to do anything, to do what we call activities of daily living, like shower, clean, cook, go to work, sometimes you need the medication to bring you up to functioning, so you can actually then seek further treatment in the form of talking therapies. Different people respond differently to different medications, but your GP or the person prescribing you the medication should be able to do a blood test, at least that is basic. And then talk to you about any allergies you might have, take your history to determine which medication might work best for you. If you are on medication and it's not working, it is very much okay to go back to the prescriber to say to them, this is not working for me. Can I have another kind? There are different kinds of medication and they work in different ways, but a lot of them are effective. Sometimes you have to go through one or two to get to the one that actually works for you. The other thing about medication as well is that it takes time to start seeing effects. So you have to give it time. You don't take an antidepressant today and you start feeling okay the next day. Sometimes it takes anything from 2 to 8 weeks, depending on the type of medication. The other part of treatment is counseling. So this is where I come in. For instance, if you can take me to the next slide, please. Thank you. So a lot of my African clients share that it took them a long time to access the helpline or any form of counseling for many reasons. One is that they're not used to it. Two, that they're afraid. Three, they're worried that, their employers might find out. They don't want anyone to know. The list goes on. I want to make it clear. Any mental health professional that you see is bound by confidentiality. That's one. Two, 10 chances to one, the mental health professional that you will see will not know you from Adam. So it is highly unlikely that even your name will leave the building. Okay. Counseling is a place, we call it an emotionally safe space, a therapeutic space where you can go and speak to someone that you've never met before, who does not know you. And the goal is for you to be able to talk about whatever's going on for you to that person. And they can provide perspective. They will, give you information that you can get insights from. They will teach you coping skills and strategies to deal with your mental health struggles. And at the end of it all, you're going to probably get, if you do the work, you'll get a better awareness and understanding of yourself. Counseling does not mean that they give you advice, right? And the reason why we say that is because if you come to me with a situation and you ask me, Doreen, what should I do? Even if I told you what you should do, I cannot tell you what you should do. All I'm telling you is what I would do in your situation. So it is a place where you go to talk to someone, get information and perspective, and then you will decide, because you know yourself better than anybody, what will work for you. Okay? So again, calling your EAP helpline or seeking counseling actually guarantees confidentiality, because 10 chances to one, the people you speak to will not know you. A lot of my clients that I've had over the years, if I walk down the street, I would not notice them. I would not know who they were, because they are random people that were allocated to me or referred to me, or people found me on the internet and I don't know them. A lot of them are not Sierra Leonean. I have had a few Sierra Leoneans, but even those I did not know. And sometimes when people start to tell me I am this person, it is a therapist's job to help the client maintain anonymity and confidentiality. So usually I'll say to them, don't tell me anything about people because I might know them. But 10 chances to one, I don't. So please, mental health is key to our functioning in everyday life, right? As Fiona said in the previous segment, there's a lot of risk factors for your physical health that are actually informed by the deficiencies in your mental health. So if you start struggling with stress can lead to diabetes. Stress obviously increases your high blood pressure, and it affects your ability to make judgments to survive and thrive. So again, if you struggle with mental health, first place to look at your EAP if you're employed. If you're not employed, look at what the local town or city that you live in. If you Google mental health, say for example, I live in Whitby. If I Google mental health support in Whitby, a whole host of information and agencies will come up. So let's start there. At this point, I will now bow out. Thank you for inviting me, and I'll be in the breakout room for anyone with questions.
Thank you, Doreen. We appreciate you. Thank you so very much. That was very informative. I think it was awesome to hear you speak to the stigma we have towards mental health. An African mother believes that she can pray you out of an illness. That mindset is one, excuse me, that we definitely need to change. So thank you. I appreciate you taking time to speak with us today. So, ladies and gentlemen, the next person we are going to have come to us is actually going to be Mr. Christopher Royan. He happens to be a mobile mortgage advisor with the CIBC Bank. CIBC is one of the leading banks we have in Canada. And one piece of trauma that I know is impacting a lot of people in our community will speak to, the first-time home buying program, variable mortgage rates. So Christopher is actually going to come on board to speak to that. He is passionate, excuse me, he is passionate about helping people achieve their home ownership goals, no matter what they may be. Whether you want to buy your first home, access your home equity, or move your mortgage over to CIBC, he can empower you to make smart mortgage and home financing decisions. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to bring Mr. Christopher Roy in here. Chris, are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Great.
Welcome and thank you so very much. So I'll pull up your PowerPoint whilst you're introducing yourself so that way I can drive for you, okay?
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, now let me share my screen.
Thank you.
And let me know once you can see, okay?
Definitely, I'll do that.
Are you good?
Yep, I'm there. Thank you. Thank you, Francetta.
You're very welcome.
And folks, thank you so much for taking me into this webinar. It's such a beautiful session here. Beautiful weather outside there. And I work in Toronto. I work for one of the major banks. It's CIBC as a mortgage advisor. And incidentally, we have been talking about the virtual health fair, health webinar. So we talked about physical and the mental, and now let's switch gears to the financials. So the next slide, please. So basically, I come as a mortgage advisor and I help clients to acquire the mortgage. Getting a home is one of the passions of many people, including me. And to get there, it's not an easy task, but there is a process that needs to be followed. One of the most important things is you have to understand the basics. There are a few things that you need to look into, and the basics are, if you can go to the next one, please, Francetta. Yeah, knowing the basics. There are basically six factors which plays a big role here, as far as a bank is concerned, as far as an individual is concerned. The bank looks at the income as well as the affordability of a client. Look at it this way. You must have an income for you to make the mortgage payments. And you must be able to afford the mortgage payment. Things are a little stressful over here in this part of the country, where there's been some increase in the interest rates, and the mortgage payments are getting higher. So the your income needs to be supported with an affordability also. So a lot of budgeting requires to go into the whole thing. So the bank wants to protect you, and you must protect yourself also. So that's why the bank actually comes in. One of the most important aspects is income and affordability. The next thing that the bank looks at is the employment history of a client. The reason being is this: there needs to be a stability as far as income is concerned. That's the most important thing. Why stability? Because the bank wants to make sure that it doesn't inconvenience the client in terms of requesting for the mortgage payments. So if the bank identifies a person with a good employment history, then it feels comfortable. It mitigates all the risk factors, and it is happy to provide the mortgage to a client. A very important thing is the total debt of a client. Look at it this way. You have to look at your debts. The first question that when a client comes and asks me for a mortgage, I ask them whether do you have any type of a car loan or a student loan, because there the monthly payment takes away a big chunk of the total quantum of a mortgage that could be given to a client. Now, if a client has about $1,000 for a nice car, maybe a Lexus or maybe a BMW, the average monthly payment there is in the region of about $1,000, and that takes away a big chunk of the amount of mortgage that we can actually approve. At the same time, any student loan also. So before you apply for a mortgage, I advise clients, try not to get into these type of debts before you actually get into purchasing a home. Once you buy the house, then it's fine. Then you look at your budgets, and then accordingly you buy your house. So that's the most important thing. And the bank also looks at how much of debt that you actually have. You shouldn't be flooded with too much of debts, too many unsecured debts. Then it alarms the bank. Oh my God, how can we give a client? And the bank looks at those person as a credit seeker. So that's the most important thing. I mean, I'm not disputing the fact that clients should not have debts. They can have a lot of debt also. But at the same time, if he has a lot of income, a lot of wealth, then it makes sense. So the balance sheet actually works perfectly well as far as those types of clients are concerned. Because we do have clients with huge amount of debts, about 3 million, 4 million of debts with about 5-6 houses happening, right? And then the monthly mortgage payments are is in the $15,000, $16,000, $17,000, but they have a proportional amount of income that they could possibly have. The next important thing is the credit history. We have two credit bureaus in the country. One is Equifax and one is TransUnion. These two credit bureaus report every single payment of a client who has a credit card, who has a line of credit, who has a mortgage. So what we do is we look at your credit bureau report and we see what your payment patterns are. The bank is very fussy as far as this is concerned. If they see one single missed payment, the bank makes a big fuss to approve a mortgage. So you must have a clean slate of good payment history. If you have a credit card for about, say, $5,000, keep your limits within the $5,000. Never exceed the $5,000. There was a time when a client actually, he pushed it up by $5,100. The CAA actually pushed a pre-authorized payment into that when he was having a balance of about $4,100. So $200 made a big difference, and his credit score sank so much. Now I'm actually, groping to have his mortgage approved. So just make sure that when you're having your debts, your credit card payments, keep it as low as possible, spend, come back home, make the payment, and the bank sees everything at that time. So bank also makes certain soft checks, and they know if a client is actually paying around with too much of a debt, they go to the extent of even reducing the line of credit limits, because the banks get scared. This person is heavily debt loaded and he may not be able to pay. This is the best part, the savings. You must have some amount of savings for you to support for us to give a mortgage. Now, what is your skin in the game? So you're a partnership of 5% or 10% or 20%. Only then the bank needs a partnership of yours for the bank to approve a mortgage. You can start off as low as 5%, and you can. I mean, I'll be coming onto the next slides. So you must have basically some savings, and that must be from you. And life events. Life events, just be a little cautious here. Just analyze, push your plans a little ahead and see what exactly is going to happen. Whether you're expecting a baby, or whether you're going to have a wedding, or whether you're anticipating a divorce, or whether is there a death in the family or something like that, and accordingly make plans so that because this is a big venture when you're getting into a mortgage. So these are the things that you should actually look into while getting into the to be a homeowner. The next slide, please, Franchetta. Yes. Now this is the best part. New home versus resale. A new home is when you go to a builder and then say, I want to buy a house. versus a resale is when there is already an existing house that you would want to buy. There's a lot of difference. When I went in, I mean, my passion was to go in for a new house. My wife said, I want a new house. I don't want anything lesser than a new house. So that was my requirement. So the advantages is new appliances, a well planned layout, and also some time that you can actually have for you to make your savings and then prepare yourself. So you have about approximately 8 to 9 months, or maybe one to 1.5 years before a builder can actually give you the house. But in case of condominium, that's a different story. But if it is a house, it's around that region. I mean, unless under some exceptional periods like this, like during the COVID time, when the builders had to grope for the time. Whereas a resale house, it's an already an existing house. You're going to have a look at it, see the layout, and if your gut says this is the house that I would want, well, take it, and then come to us, and then we'll give you the mortgage. The type of homes in Canada, we have various types of houses. We have condominiums, we have row of townhouses, we have semi-detached, we have stacked houses, we have detached houses. So whichever is convenient for you, which is adaptable for you, you could probably take it. And of course, a detached house is is an expensive house, and those houses range nowadays in the region of about 1.3, and it goes up to as much as 5, 10, 15 million and things like that. And locations, why is it important? It depends upon your kids. If you have kids, you would like to be in a location where you have a good a convenient school, a good school to suit your taste, and as well as parks and amenities, a hospital, and things like that. So these are the things you would probably want to consider before you make the purchase of the properties. Please, Francetta, can we have the next one? Yes. This is a little technical here, but I'll keep it to the minimum. You find that the red horizontal bar, it says amortization. What does that mean? That's the total length of the whole mortgage. It can start, it starts from 0 and it goes all the way to 25 years or maybe even 30 years. I mean, that's the bank's benchmark. Normally, banks give a 25-year amortization. That's a comfortable length for a whole mortgage to be paid off. But do we hold you back for the whole 25 years? No. We break it down into terms. So what are the terms? On the top, you see the word term there, and it is a smaller period. So this term could be 3 years or 5 years or 7 years or 2 years or 1 year. What it basically says is this, that you are contracted with the bank that for a period of 3 years that you're contracted with the bank and you will continue to make the mortgage payments. So at the end of the 3 years, you're ready to take a decision whether you want to pay off the entire balance of the mortgage or you want to leave the contract. You want to switch your mortgage to another financial institution, or if you want to pay off the whole mortgage completely, or if you want, you can renew the mortgage also. So you can renew the mortgage to the next available option, depending upon the interest rate which is available at that point of time, whether it is a fixed or a variable. I'll come to that a little later on that. So that's the term, and the longer the amortization, the higher is the lesser is the monthly payment, and the shorter the amortization, the higher is the monthly payment. Sometimes clients come to me and say, "Hey, Chris, 25 years is too high, and you're saying the monthly mortgage payment is about $2,000. What if I can actually do a $3,000 payment?" Yes, fine, go ahead. And when we plug in the $3,000, the amortization actually shrinks down to a much lower number of years. So it's your option whether you would want to go for a 25-year amortization or a 30-year amortization, or if you want to make a higher monthly mortgage payment, then you can actually, reduce the amortization. Francetta, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. Now here you have 4 rows of terms. I'll first go with the lowest one, that is the open. The open looks, it's free. It's free means in the sense that you're free to pay off the mortgage at any point of time. When you take a mortgage with us, there's basically a contract, and the contract is for a term. But this open mortgage, you can pay off the mortgage at any time. But because the flexibility of you to pay off the mortgage at any time, the bank actually has a higher interest rate over here. So that is why we go for a closed. A closed reduces the interest rates. And within the closed, you have 2 types. One is a fixed and one is a variable. Now, what is a fixed? A fixed rate, if I quote you a rate of about, say, 5.69 right now for a 3-year rate, that 5.68 remains for the whole 3 years. It doesn't change at all. And if I say that the monthly mortgage payment is in the region of about, say, $3,500, a certain portion of it goes towards the principal and a certain portion of it goes towards the interest. The interest portion the bank takes, and the principal portion reduces your monthly mortgage payments. Your total mortgage balance. So a person with a budgeted mindset, they generally go for a fixed. They say, let's go for a fixed and let's not bother about, let's not worry about, any increase or a decrease in the rates. I'm budgeted for the next 3 years. This is going to be the monthly payment. This is my pay, and this is what it is. But sometimes client would like to go for a variable also. Variable is, they take a little bit of a risk. They may probably anticipate that the Bank of Canada could possibly reduce the rate. And if it reduces, the rates also goes down. It depends upon the way the economy actually functions. There has been a time that the variable rate went down to as low as 0.99%. That was when I took my mortgage. It was 0.99%. It was ridiculously low. But with all this COVID and with all this inflation happening over here, now the interest rates have gone up to as high as 6.7%. So that's what it is. So many people are actually struggling with these variable rates. So just be a little cautious when you're actually going in for a variable rate. Think of what could possibly happen. So I always advise clients to go for a 3-year variable rate just in case, right? So that you don't risk too much in terms of the banks bumping it up so much. Many people are struggling right now. They had the rates at about 1.99, and now they are paying about 6.7%. So which is huge. Their monthly payments have actually gone up about 3 to 4 times higher, and many of them are struggling. And now many people are actually switching gears and they want to do a fixed rate. Now, previously I was a variable guy, but now in a situation like this, the first time that I've actually gone onto a fixed rate. So just look into those options, get the advice from financial experts like this, and then accordingly take a decision. Next slide, please. The mortgage down payment option, like I was mentioning before, that you must have a partnership with the bank. So generally the banks like a client to put a 20% down payment, and that's known as the conventional mortgage. For example, if you're taking a mortgage if you're buying a property for about $1 million, 20% is about $200,000. It's quite a lot of money, yes, but people do that. But 20% and $800,000 will be the mortgage. Or if you're buying a house for about $500,000, it's the same. You proportionately bring it down, $100,000. But do people have $100,000 and $200,000? No, they don't have. So in that case, what are the options? The option is to go for a high ratio mortgage. A high ratio mortgage means that you can do as low as 5%. So if you're going to buy a house for about say $1,999,000 to be specific, so you can do 10%, so which is about $100,000. So you can do that, and then you can continue. And if your income is sufficient enough, the bank can actually approve your $900,000 mortgage. So that's a possibility there. But what happens there? Your mortgage will be insured by an insurance company because there is a risk. Your partnership is only at about 5% or 10%. So an insurance company actually secures the mortgage and tells the bank, we are going to charge the client a premium. God forbid if anything happens, it tells the bank, don't worry about that. We'll take care. So they insure the mortgage. So in that case, many people do go in for this high ratio mortgage. So not necessarily if you're not having the 20%, it shouldn't throw you away. Yes, there are options, and we can actually do that, which is with as low as 5% even, right? So can we go to the next one, please, Francetta? Yeah, the next one. Now there are a few additional costs besides the mortgage that you have to be very wary about. From the bank's perspective, the bank is comfortable seeing that you have at least about 1.5% of the total value of the house. If you're buying a mortgage for about $1 million, $15,000, you must have in your bank account. Only then the bank actually approves it. It needs to see that, and that must be from your own savings. So why do you need the $15,000? You have various expenses. Francetta, can you go to the next slide too, please? Yeah. That's it. Not the previous one, please. Thanks. Yeah, that's it. So you have home inspection fees. You might probably want to have an inspector inspect the house, maybe for plumbing, maybe for mold, maybe for any defects. You wouldn't want to buy a house with some defects. So you hire a home inspector to see if there are any cracks in the house or anything like that. Home appraisal and the property valuation. So when you buy a house, the bank actually appraises the property. It wants to make sure. You might be coming to me with the purchase and sale agreement that the value of the house is about $800,000, but the bank wants to make sure, is that house worth $800,000? So it sends its appraisal team to see if the value of the house is indeed $800,000, and then we get an appraisal report. And if it's at $800,000, that's fine. But if it is something lesser than that, the bank is not going to approve. There have been so many cases that people have actually contracted for about $900,000, and when we did the mortgage, when we did the appraisal, it came in at $750,000. So the clients were alarmed, and they had signed the contract, they had signed the purchase and sale agreement, and now that they are on a fix. They have to come back with another $150,000 extra to close the deal. The bank will not deviate from its policies here. Whatever be the appraisal value, it's a purchase price or the appraised value, whichever is lower, which becomes. So there's an annual fee on that. So besides that, you have legal fees that you have to pay to the lawyers, then realtor fees. So all this comes to about approximately 1.5% of the total value. So when you should allocate about 1.5% of the total value of the house besides the down payment. Please, Francetta, I hope I'm not exceeding the time.
You're doing good for time. You have about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. So you have to protect your family from the unexpected, right? Now, if you can go to the next one, please. Yeah, no, they are. Just previously, just one more before. Okay. No, just the previous one, please, Vanessa.
Oh, you want me to go back? Okay.
Yeah, go back. Yeah, previous. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we can actually hold on there. So you have one of the most important things is that mortgage creditor insurance. So what does that mean? It protects your mortgage against life or disability or job loss. So I had a client who was an IT client taking a big mortgage in the region of about $900,000 and a huge monthly payment of about approximately $6,000 to $7,000. And I told him, you're an IT specialist, and there's a big possibility of tech companies switching gears to artificial intelligence. There could be a possibility of you losing a job. So if you want, you can actually insure yourself against insurance. So we protected his family. So he said, fine, Chris, let's go ahead. It's a small premium that he had to pay. But believe me, within 3 months, he lost his job. And then he calls me and asks me, Chris, this is what happened. What you advised was something which was worthwhile. Now I lost my job. What's the process? So I actually, guided him with what needs to be done. And then, he was happy about that. Please, Vanessa, can we have the next one? Next slide, please. Next one. Next one. Thanks. Yeah. You can go to the next one also. Maybe I can actually summarize here. The next one also. Yeah, perfect. Let's stop there. Sorry, just before. Yeah, that's it. So understanding your mortgage journey, assess your finances, build your home team. Build your home buying team. Your home buying team will be who? It is you, your mortgage advisor, your realtor, your lawyer. Prepare for a meeting with the realtor, with a mortgage advisor. Determine what you can qualify for with a mortgage advisor. Start the search of your house. Discuss affordability with your advisor. Work with your realtor. Place an offer on the property. Number 3, secure the mortgage approval. So, please get the advice from a mortgage advisor to finalize his approval. Because if you're going to sign a contract before finalizing an approval, what if the bank turns around and it says it cannot approve it? Then you're in a grave situation. So it is always better that you have a mortgage approved first before you can actually put in your final offer. Do the property appraisal, final approval, and then ready to close. Get your lawyer involved. You go with your lawyer. The seller comes with his lawyer. We as a bank, we give the money to the lawyer. You bring your down payment to the lawyer. Place the money in his trust account, and then the lawyer approaches the vendor's lawyer, and then they switch the documents, and then they hand over the keys to you. So that's what it is. And finally, just the next slide also, please. Yeah, the government does come with some incentives. They have just the previous, yeah. So if you're a first-time home buyer, just look it up on the website. You have a buyer's tax credit, where you get incentives for you to not to pay, the land transfer tax. And then the first-time home buyer, the home buyer's plan. So as a first-time home buyer, you have a lot of incentives, like you can actually liquidate your RRSPs without having to pay your taxes and things like that. So these are certain incentives which you would possibly want to discuss with your mortgage advisor. That's a big discussion. So just reach out to a mortgage advisor first, a realtor, and then good luck on your home purchase. So I'll be stepping away because I have a prior appointment fixed after this. For whatever said, if there's any questions, you can just let me know, or let Francesca know, and then I can always get back to you with any questions that you have. Thank you so much, Francesca.
Thank you, Christopher.
And thank you, folks.
Very, very informative. We appreciate you so very much. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am sure you agree that this has been a really awesome presentation so far. Christopher is not going to be available for the breakout sessions later, but we will have the information on the website. You can reach out to him if you want to have a one-on-one consultation. If you're looking to buy your first home, very exciting. Congratulations. Again, thank you for the support from CIBC. Thank you, Christopher. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
So the next person we have coming up This also happens to be a phenomenal lady. So we have a saying in our culture about taking your hand to go out into the streets to buy trouble. And this is what happened to me when I met this lady. Crystal is my personal trainer. She works me out to the bone. She doesn't take my sweat for granted. Also a phenomenal lady, and I am so excited to bring her to you so that way you can get to hear her story. I'll give you a little bit of a background. She is a certified personal trainer. She started her team, which is Gutsy Strong, to help people in the chronic illness community discover their strengths, overcoming limiting beliefs, and support each other on their journey towards optimal health. As someone who has spent 3/4 of her life chronically ill, and it would be hard to believe once you meet this woman, she understands how challenging it can be to live with chronic illness and pain. Crystal is certified through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring to you Crystal McCaffey, and here she is. Welcome,
Hello,
Crystal.
everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Francetta. Thank you for this opportunity to connect with this community. It's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to interact with individuals and hopefully get them excited about health and fitness. And I'm honored to be included in such an esteemed group of speakers. So thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time today. Do I have access to share my screen?
Yes, you do. Go ahead.
Perfect. Oh, okay. Can we see that?
Not yet. So let's give it a few minutes.
Oh. No, you're not seeing my screen? I'm sorry.
No, not yet. I'll tell you once it pops up. Now we can.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Sorry about that. As Francetta said, my name is Crystal McCaffey. I am a certified personal trainer. I came about this in a roundabout sort of way. I'm an MBA, business analysis manager and project manager who changed careers midstream because I truly believe in the transformative power of training and nutrition. So I really appreciate this opportunity to discuss training for life and the incorporation of fitness and training for disease prevention and longevity. I'm just going to skip over who I am because Francetta did a wonderful job of introducing me. So what is health? A lot of people define health simply as the absence of illness or injury. And I think that we really should be trying to pursue abundant health by incorporating training, nutrition, and mindset practices in order to not only fortify our physical and mental well-being, but to prevent disease and to promote longevity. I've often said that we cannot be mentally well if we're not physically well. And similarly, we can't be physically well if we're not mentally well. We are one. We are not of two separate minds, and we're not separate mind and body. So modifying basic lifestyle factors such as diet and exercise can prevent the onset of obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, as well as slow down the age-related progressions of sarcopenia and osteoporosis, which is something that is a concern for all of us. So obesity is something that we talk about a lot, but many don't understand exactly how it's measured. So obesity is essentially just the storage and accumulation of excess body fat. And now the storage of visceral fat around the waist and the abdominal area increases our risk factors of developing cardiovascular disease. So how do we measure our obesity? So the body mass index, or BMI, is simply a calculation of your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared. And the general rule of thumb at this point is a BMI of greater than 30 kilograms per meter squared with a waist circumference of 35 inches or more for women or 40 inches or more for men is considered a positive risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Now, why should we be concerned? Well, being overweight or obese can increase your risk of many serious health conditions. It also increases your all-cause mortality rate, hypertension, coronary heart disease, stroke, gallbladder disease, increases your risk of certain cancers such as liver and gallbladder, and also increases our risk of diabetes. And obviously diabetes is of great concern. And some people misunderstand what it is. It is essentially, it's a metabolic disease that affects our body's ability to metabolize sugars. Now, there are 4 types, but typically we talk about 2, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 diabetes is typically diagnosed in childhood or early adulthood. In previous years, we used to refer to it as juvenile diabetes, and individuals with type 1 diabetes require insulin injections in order to metabolize glucose. And it is believed at this point to be caused by an immune reaction that results in the body attacking itself. And there's no known way at this point to prevent type 1 diabetes. But pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes, individuals can in fact produce their own insulin, but unfortunately their tissue has become insensitive to it, which makes it really difficult to manage their blood sugar. The wonderful news is that for both pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes, it is preventable by losing weight if one is already deemed overweight or obese, and consuming a healthy diet and participating in regular exercise. Now, why should we be concerned? Well, prolonged uncontrolled blood sugar levels can cause serious health impacts. First, to large blood vessels of the heart, brain, and legs, which increases our risk of heart attack and stroke. It can also damage small blood vessels that can lead to kidney disease, vision impairments, cataracts, glaucoma. Issues with the feet is very common for individuals with diabetes, and dry skin, which increases the risk of infection. And other symptoms of the body are also impacted, such as the digestive system, skin, teeth, gums, and the immune system. So those are the lifestyle-related concerns. Now, there's also age-related concerns, specifically sarcopenia and osteoporosis. So sarcopenia is age-related muscle loss. And now everyone over the age of 30 begins to lose muscle mass. Obviously, the rate of decline is higher for those who are sedentary versus those who are active. So those that do not train will lose somewhere between 5 to 10% of their muscle mass every decade. And what's significant about that is that muscle loss represents 90% of the strength lost associated with the aging process. And why that's a concern is that we're not only losing the quantity of muscle, but also the quality of muscle. And as muscle quality decreases, our ability to generate force and to react quickly decreases significantly, which makes things like daily activities much more difficult. And also, sarcopenia has been associated with increased incidence of falls. So as people are getting older in age, as they've lost their muscle mass, they're not able to react as quickly, so they're more likely to fall. And how to slow down sarcopenia? As we said, it's age-related, but the deleterious effects of it can be moderated or even reversed with the use of resistance training, because resistance training increases not only muscle mass and strength, but also muscle function. So osteoporosis, basically it translates to porous bones. It's a condition where our bones become weak and brittle over time due to demineralization. Now, brittle bones are particularly susceptible to breakage, particularly in the spine and hip. And this is why we hear of older individuals falling and breaking their hip. It's due to both the muscle loss, their inability to react quickly, and the brittle bones that are more likely to fracture or break when falling. So how do we slow down osteoporosis? Well, it's important to recognize that bone tissue, like muscle tissue, is very much alive and dynamic. It is constantly going through a process of remodeling, which is breaking down and rebuilding. So with proper nutrition, including a sufficient calcium intake and exercise, you can improve your bone health over time. And bone, like muscle, adapts to the stress placed on it. So weight-bearing exercises can not only lead to increases in bone mineral density and muscle building. For those individuals with a sedentary lifestyle, simply incorporating walking or jogging into your life can create a sufficient stimulus for a very positive bone adaptation. And for those who are already quite active, heavy resistance training is recommended to improve bone mineral density. So by making a few simple lifestyle modifications, you can see that we can reduce our risk of developing disease and to set ourselves on a course towards longevity. Now, how do we do that? Well, first and foremost, we would look at our diet. We want to look at eating healthy foods And the Heart and Stroke Association likes to say the correct amount of food at the right time in order to maintain your blood sugar and to ensure that you're consuming sufficient macro and micronutrients that your body needs. And that's really revolves around the concept of meal planning. We want to create meals based on your food preferences that focus on lean protein more than anything. Across the board, individuals don't eat enough proteins to support their physical health. So we want to focus on lean protein, non-starchy vegetables, and whole foods, minimizing our consumption of overly processed foods, and removing, ideally, or at very least minimizing beverages that are added with sugar, and adopting a plate method, which I will show in the next slide. And also looking at portion control versus serving sizes. So when we are looking at packaged foods, for instance, it'll show you a serving size, which will give you an exact amount of protein, carbs, fats, and calories per a serving. That is different than the portion that we will eat. Anyone who has ever weighed peanut butter to see how many calories and fat are in a tablespoon of peanut butter will realize how ridiculously sad some portion size or serving sizes are. And portions have grown exponentially in North America in the last 3 decades. And now currently they're saying a current restaurant meal in the US can be the equivalent of 3 to 4 servings. So we need to practice portion control. When we're eating out, the best course of action is simply to ask for half your meal wrapped and to go with you. And when we're at home, to weigh and measure our foods instead of free eating, because it's so easy to overdo it that way. So the plate method that is recommended by the Heart and Stroke Association says half your plate should be non-starchy vegetables, a quarter of your plate should be whole grains, and a quarter of your plate should be protein. Adopting this methodology will move you towards ensuring you're getting a sufficient amount of protein and other micronutrients, and also helping to control your caloric intake. And of course, they recommend water or 0-calorie drinks. Not drinking your calories is a great way to move into a deficit. Now, exercise is often a tricky subject. Some people don't like, they will tell me they hate exercising. There's not a single exercise that they like, because I always say the best way to incorporate fitness into your life is to do what you like. And if you can't find something that you like, then pick what you hate the least. But it's really important to remember that exercise is meant to add to your life, not to detract from it. So it's important to slowly add movement into your day, incorporating modalities that you actually enjoy. Sorry, something happened there. I just skipped ahead for some reason. I apologize for that. Here we go. So what are the exercise recommendations? In terms of aerobic conditioning, 30 minutes, 5 days a week, as Dr. Strasser King mentioned earlier, is the recommendation. So if a 30-minute walk is great, if 30 minutes at one time is not feasible due to your schedule, three 10-minute walks a day would be perfect. And we don't need to be going at a high rate or a high pace. We want to move at a moderate intensity. So that's the intensity that you would be able to carry on a conversation. For instance, you shouldn't be huffing and puffing. And initially, we would focus on increasing the duration as opposed to intensity. So if initially a 5-minute walk is all that you can get in, over time, increasing that from 5 to 7 to 10 would be the goal, as opposed to going from walking to jogging. Excuse me. Resistance training. The recommendation is 2 to 3 non-consecutive days a week. I'm going to ask for just a moment. 2 to 3 non-consecutive days a week, with one set working up to 2 to 4. I apologize. All of my clients are sick, and I think it's catching up to me. With 8 to 12 reps, training each muscle group twice a week and gradually increasing load. And we also want to think about flexibility training, ideally introducing that 2 to 3 times a week, looking at static stretches held for between 10 and 30 seconds. And again, we want to stretch each muscle group ideally 2 to 3 times a week. And we want to think about leaning into discomfort, but shying away from pain. So what does that mean? If you are new to training, initially there will be discomfort regardless of the level of intensity because it's something new to the body. So as long as we are moving into discomfort, which means we might feel a little bit of stretching, might be a little bit of tenderness, tightness, that's okay. If we feel pain, we should back away altogether. So where do we start? Well, low impact is always the best way to start. And walking is honestly the most underrated form of exercise there is out there. There is no barrier to, little barrier to entry. You simply need, a good pair of shoes and a space. And even if you can't get outside to walk because you're working from home, walking pads that go under your desk are a great option. Other low impact exercises would be swimming, yoga, stretching, and cycling. If you're ready to progress beyond that, more into a moderate impact exercise regimen, I would suggest starting with body weight movements. And once you're comfortable with performing those movements with excellent form, we would add resistance. Initially with resistance bands, and then over time with weight, whether it is dumbbells, kettlebells, what have you. And then we can progress even further into high impact, something like running or CrossFit. Although it's really important that we emphasize that it's not those types of activities are not advisable for anyone with joint issues or arthritis. And quite simply, they're not necessary in order to maintain your health. So mindset is particularly important. Mindset is essentially a mental attitude formed from previous experiences that will determine how you will interpret and respond to the situations around you. And we see this a lot for example, in my community, in the chronic illness community, that we have ruminating and this negative mindset. And I'll see clients come in, they say, no matter what I eat, I always feel uncomfortable, or I'm too tired, or I'm too sore to move. I feel weak and I feel fragile and I feel lesser. And this creates this negativity spiral. And the more we think in negative terms, it increases our body's stress, and which ultimately increases the symptoms that we face. And so I always encourage people to try to reframe their interpretation into a more positive outlook, instead of thinking about what they can't eat, especially when we're talking about transitioning to like a healthier eating plan. Instead of thinking about, eating for comfort or because I'm angry or I'm feeling emotional or I'm actually lonely, I'm going to think about feeding myself because I'm nourishing my body. I'm not going to worry about what I cannot do right now, whether it's because of illness or injury, but I'm going to focus on what I can do, and I'm going to do it and give myself grace, recognizing that I'm going to do the best that I can any given day. And that may not always look the same. Some days are going to be better than others. And I'm not going to compare myself to others in my cohort because others aren't facing the same challenges that I am. And instead of thinking of myself as weak or fragile or lesser, I'm going to think of myself as strong and resilient and unstoppable. And this creates a positivity spiral where instead of focusing on the negative, I will say, yes, I face challenges and I overcome them every day because I'm a warrior. And that warrior concept is something that I've embraced a long time ago as someone who has been chronically ill since she was 10 years old and has overcome everything that disease has thrown at her and tried to destroy her with. And I think every woman, quite honestly, is a warrior. We literally carry the weight of the world of raising our children and keeping society together. And so we are absolutely warriors. So I feel like that applies to all of us. And in terms of mindset, I also believe that we are what we believe we are. Right? And visualization is a big part of how we interpret our surroundings. So our interpretation of our physiological reactions determines our reality. And the example I often use is that fear and exhilaration are the same physiological experiences. And so earlier this year, I'm going to use a personal example. I went skydiving, and Francetta thought I was crazy, but this is something that had been on my, my bucket list since I was 19 years old, when I was sick in the hospital and I was given my last rites. And I had a list of things that I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't do all of these things. And so skydiving was on this list that if I ever got out of the hospital and ever was well enough, I would do. Now, obviously, I'm on this airplane. My knees are hanging over the edge. I'm staring at the ground that was 12,500 feet below, and my heart rate was elevated and I was sweating. And that was exhilaration. From my perspective, I interpreted that as excitement because this was something I'd wanted to do for years. Whereas if I was someone who believed that I was fearful of heights, that elevated heart rate and that sweating would have been interpreted as fear. So the experience is the same. The interpretation was very, very different. And the other piece I want to come back to is that our subconscious mind cannot actually tell the difference between memories and thoughts. And so for those of us who deal with trauma, and many of us do, I've often said that none of us are ever going to get out of this life unscathed. We all have something that we have to deal with. Ruminating is reliving an experience. And so especially those of us who have trauma or have had illness in our lives, ruminating is really a dangerous experience because we're constantly reliving the experience and our body is feeling it over and over again. And so what I try to encourage individuals, whether they are overcoming, trauma, they are trying to create a new, healthier lifestyle, this new vision of themselves, is to create this new narrative and to repeat it until they accept it as truth. Because by changing your mindset, you change your experience. One of the questions that I get quite often as a trainer is, well, how do you stay motivated? Or how do you stay motivated is probably the biggest one. And the truth of the matter is that we don't, but we create a narrative in our minds that says, I am a healthy person, and as such, I act in a certain way. What do? I make healthy food choices on a daily basis. I choose to make sure that I get my steps in every day. I choose to move my body with intention. I choose to nourish it. And so it's really creating and accepting this narrative that drives behavior and will drive change in our lives. So incorporating functional and mobility movements into your day will go a long way in terms of improving one's overall health. So I apologize there. Clicked one too far. So starting with daily movement, ideally, 3 10-minute walks a day, and then incorporating some flexibility or mobility movements. Now, I've given, you will all have access to this. So these are all stretches that can be done, and with YouTube links, these are a full body routine that will work all your muscle groups, and it's something that you can do starting with one set of 8 reps each. And again, we're going to talk about leaning into discomfort but backing away from pain. It may be a little bit challenging to demonstrate all of these. I'm not sure how I'm actually going to try to do some of these movements, but if there's an issue with the screen, you can just let me know. So yeah, I think I'm going to pop out, aren't I? You think it will pop out. Okay, how about I will leave that to you guys. And then in terms of resistance training, 2 to 3 times non-consecutive days a week is what's recommended. The reason we want non-consecutive days a week is we want to ensure that you have a sufficient amount of time to recover after training. We start with one set of 8 to 12 reps. Typically, I would suggest one set of 8 reps. And then over time, increase the number of reps. Often what happens when we are in the gym, there's this inclination to constantly be increasing the weight over time because we feel like that is ultimately the measure of success. I would say that performing each of your reps with perfect form is the ideal, and progressing that over time through adding half reps, time under tension, so putting pauses in your reps, and then doing variations is a much better move, or a much better strategy than simply adding weight over time. Often people are in a rush to increase weight, and ultimately what they do is they rush towards injury, and we don't want to do that. And in terms of what resistance training should look like, there is a lot of misinformation on social media. So what I would suggest to you, if you are looking to do your own form of training, you're training on your own, is to focus on the 6 functional movement patterns. And these are the basic movements that our bodies should be able to perform. We're talking about a squat, a hinge movement, a lunge movement, pushing and pulling that are both vertical and horizontal, and carrying. Now, if you can build a program around these pieces, you will build would be full body routines that are ensuring that there's balance in your training, in terms of if you're doing pushing, you're doing pulling, which means if you're using your chest muscles, you're also then using your back muscles. We want to build things evenly. Similarly, if we're working on our legs, we want to do quad exercises and balance those with hamstring exercises. That way we don't create any sort of muscular imbalance. You often see this in the gym, where individuals have a preference. For example, men love chest day. Like, all they want to do is chest. They want to bench press, and they want to do incline presses and whatnot, which is wonderful because they want to build their musculature in their chest. But if you have a very strong chest but a very weak back, your posture becomes terrible. And similarly, so we want to focus on balance in terms of our activities. So I'm going to attempt to demonstrate a couple of these movements. Hopefully I don't pop out of the screen. Let's see. Can you still see me? Okay.
We can see you, Crystal.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm a little. So with a squatting movement, basically we want to stand. If you guys want to do this with me, we want to stand with our feet hip width apart, toes pointed out, and we want to descend deeply as if we were going to sit in a chair behind us. We're going to hold that for a second and then return to standing position. So this is a basic squat. Again, we would do 8 reps of this. And then once this becomes easy, we can increase to 12, up to 12 reps. And then once that becomes easy, we would add resistance by holding a weight. If you don't have weights at home, water bottles, soup cans. I have a client who loves Javex. Apparently she has a lot of it. So she will hold multiple Javex bottles in order to add resistance. So that would be our first movement pattern. The second is a hinge. So with a hip hinge movement, again, we're standing with roughly hip width apart. Knees are slightly bent. And we want to push our hips back behind us as deeply as we can to get a good stretch through the hamstrings and the glutes. And again, we can do this for up to 12 reps. Once that becomes easy, we add weight. So we would hold weights in our hand. Again, if we have weights, kettlebells, soup cans, Javex bottles, whatever it is, and do that in order to add some resistance. So those are the first 2 movements. Lunges would be, again, we're standing roughly between shoulder and hip width apart, and we're going to step out with one leg. The other leg, the knee is going to drop to the ground, and we're going to return to standing position by pushing through the heel of our forward leg. Again, we can do these 8 on one side, then repeat on the other side, or go back and forth. So with pushing movements, we have both a horizontal and a vertical. So the standard pushing movement is considered an overhead press. So again, we can have weights. We can use resistance bands. This one I got from Amazon. Overhead and then back up to create resistance. Horizontal would be, again, we could use a band, comes around the back, and we're pushing horizontally out and then back. And then we could look at a pull. Now, pole is very difficult to demonstrate without equipment. So I'm going to demonstrate a horizontal bent over row. And rows are incredibly important for building strong backs. Again, if you had resistance bands, you can use that. I simply looped mine under my foot. If you have weights, you hold them in each hand. Again, our feet are going to be roughly hip width apart. We're going to hinge forward. So we're going to go back to that first movement pattern, and we're going to pull our elbows back behind us. So I'll go this way. So the movement is literally rowing back such that our elbows are behind us and then returning forward. And then carry movements. This is one of these movements that people often ask me why we do this, and it's because you have to carry groceries. If you travel, you need to be able to carry your luggage, and it's simply carrying in each hand, a weight in each hand, as heavy as you can manage, walking in one direction and then returning. Now, people often say, well, that's easy. The key there is when we walk out and we're about to loop back, instead of turning, we don't want to cause any sort of knee or ankle issues. So just make sure that you walk out and you literally walk in like a half circle and then return, such that we keep our knees and ankles happy. And again, you'll have access to this deck. This has links to YouTube videos that will help you. And I just wanted to thank you so much for this opportunity to meet with you. If you have any questions at all about training, nutrition, mindset practices, you can always reach out to me at gutsystrong.ca. That's my webpage, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you. Amazing information. Believe it or not, I was doing the demos with you.
I saw.
Yeah, and there were people in the chat that were saying they were not sure if I was actually doing the demos. I was. Crystal happens to be my trainer. She comes, she works my butt out. We kind of in agreement about everything except that skydiving thing. The day she was going, I kept looking at my phone, and then she had the guts to suggest that I go, and I said, Crystal, African people, we don't do stuff like that. But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for coming to be a part of this. Thank you for the support. So the next presenter we have is actually a huge supporter of our entity. She is somebody that has been there for us time and time again. I want to introduce Dr. Nusente Bolo Kamara. She happens to be a wife, a mother of 4, and a grandmother of 6. And to see her, you would not know. So she obtained her DDS from Claude Bernard University in Lyon, France in 1990. She has been in private practice in Canada since the year 2000, along with her husband, who also happens to be her business manager, her #1 cheerleader, and her general go-to person. She launched Shoreham Dental Toronto in 2004 and Shoreham Dental Brampton in 2016. She has been a member and a children's church teacher of All Nations Full Gospel Church since 2003. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome Dr. Nusente Bolo Kamara. Okay. Nusente, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I am actually trying to spotlight you. Oh, you know what? Your device, I have the wrong one. Give me a minute, please. Okay, you're good to go now.
Yeah, I'm good?
Yes, you are. We can see your screen. You're good.
Okay. All right. So thanks, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm not a techie person, so hopefully nothing goes wrong. If it does, I wouldn't know where to start to fix it. My staff has been awesome. They've helped me out. So anyway, you'll see up on the screen, why should I? So I want to address some misconceptions there are about oral health care or the need for care. So my first issue would be, why should I see the dentist if I don't feel like there's anything wrong? Or why should I only go when I have an issue, or should it be different? What I have noticed in our community, for example, and in a lot of immigrant or recent immigrant communities, is that people don't tend to go to the dentist unless they feel that there's something wrong. Now, the issue with oral health is that a lot of times, by the time you notice that something is wrong, it's way too late. And what could have been an easy fix now becomes a very complicated, involved, expensive, or impossible fix. The first issue that I would like to look at is the issue with gum disease. So on the screen, you can see, like, I put a few different sets of pictures. So the first one would be someone who has healthy teeth and gums. So you look at it and it looks normal. Once we step to the next level where there's just gingivitis, just looking at it may not, for an average person, you may not see that there's something wrong. But if you go to the dentist would notice, or the hygienist would notice, that there was a change in the condition of the gums. But even at that point, it's still reversible. There's no damage that is permanent at that point. But if the gum disease progresses, it will become early periodontitis or early gum disease. And then there are irreversible changes that happen. And sometimes just looking at the person, you can see maybe teeth shifting a little bit, the gums look swollen. They don't look like an orange peel that has little holes in it. It's all swollen and shiny. And we would notice that on the x-rays too, that the bone isn't where it's supposed to be. And by the time we hit moderate gum disease, there are more severe changes. And you can see that the teeth look longer, and there are gaps between the teeth, and there's a lot more bone loss. But these are things that the average person may not notice at home. And once you lose that gum and that bone holding your teeth, and no matter how good the teeth themselves are, if the attachment to the body is not in good health, then you can lose your teeth. So, and that's just one of the things that could happen. If you don't go to the dentist, you may not know that you have buildup under your gums. So like what we try to clean when you come to the dentist would be to remove the calculus that's stuck on the teeth, so plaque that has hardened. And ideally, we want that plaque to harden above the gum line. And the average person could maybe see it if they took a lot of interest in things like that. And you could look in the mirror and you'd probably see it. But if you don't, so when you look, and especially around the bottom front teeth, you could see there's some buildup there that has hardened. So in the early stages, there's a little bit, you get the moderate one, or you get more severe where there's a whole wall of it. But if we take x-rays, we can see, like right where my arrow is here, you can see like a little thorn sticking out of the tooth. That's calculus. And it doesn't look like a whole lot, but only the very middle of it is calcified enough to show on the x-ray. And when we see something like this, there's a whole lot that's collected in there. But without x-rays, you wouldn't know. And so if you do go to the dentist and they do say, please take x-rays, please don't say, I don't want to take the x-rays. You guys just want to charge me more money. Why do I have to take them? This is so that we can see whether there's stuff building up below the gum line where it's not visible. And the hygienist or the person trying to clean the teeth would like to know what there is under there so that they know that there's something to go fishing for. And if they don't know, they may or may not be able to get it, because cleaning is blind. Nobody can see under the gums. But we can feel maybe, but it helps a whole lot to know what there is. So taking the x-rays is also very important. Another reason why you got to go often enough is decay. So having cavities in your mouth, sometimes you can see yourself looking in the mirror, you could see, but if that cavity is happening in between your teeth, you're not going to be able to tell. And so on the x-ray on my left, there's some small cavities in between the teeth. So right here where my mouth is, and right there, and right here. But this is not something that you would feel at all. There's no way you would know you had a cavity if the cavity was that small. By the time you actually start to feel it, it could look more like the x-ray on my right, where the green line shows this big cavity and the red line outlines where the nerve of the tooth is. And you can see how close the cavity has become to the nerve. And at that point, there would be some symptoms. So usually someone would be able to say, when I drink something cold, it hurts, or if I eat something sweet, I feel it. But quite often, by the time we reach that point where the person is feeling it, or even worse, oh, my tooth hurts me on its own, or when I drink something cold, the pain would last for a while. If we wait until it gets to that point, and then you're coming into the dentist at that point, one is not going to be able to, it would no longer be a simple fix. We wouldn't be able to just put a filling in there and call it a day. Something that should have cost maybe a simple filling, like one of the ones on the left x-ray, would have cost maybe $200 to $300. You're now looking at $2,000 plus. So sometimes 10 times the cost, just because the person waited until they actually felt something before going in. Especially for those who have a higher pain threshold. Those people may not know that there's anything wrong. And by the time they do actually feel it, it's way too late. So they end up needing, instead of a filling, a root canal treatment, where you have to remove the nerve from the tooth, and a crown. And that could run you $2,000 plus. So for the health of for your oral health, it is important to come more regularly to the dentist than I'll just wait until I can feel something. Now, another reason to go regularly and to take the x-rays that are recommended would be in the case of pathology. So sometimes there are things that, there are issues that we may be carrying that we have no idea about, that don't hurt, or they don't hurt yet, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. So in the x-ray that I have there, this person has a big cyst growing down here, and that's eating up the bone. And these are things that don't necessarily cause any pain, but yet are still destructive. So this could, if it continues, it could eat up the bone to the extent that, let's say the person took a small blow to the jaw could fracture. And that it doesn't have to be that way. If you go regularly and you take the x-rays as recommended, something like this could be caught before it becomes a major issue. So how often would we say? We recommend at the bare minimum once a year for adults, at the very, very least. And that is only for adults that have good oral health. If your oral health is not that good, then we would recommend that you come in more often than that, at least twice a year. Some people 3 or 4 times a year to have cleanings. And the x-rays wouldn't be each time. The little ones that we take inside the mouth to check for cavities, we would do once a year, usually for adults, or once in 2 or 3 years if it's someone who does not have a history of decay. And then these bigger ones, the panoramic x-ray, like the one that's on the screen now, once in 3 years. For children, we would say bring them into the dentist twice a year, because cavities in children go really quickly and go from nothing to being a very big thing in a short time. So for children, we would say bring them in twice a year, and x-rays once a year or less if they don't have a history of decay. Now, there's also more pathology that we're not looking for in x-rays. So, and in this case, coming in more regularly and having the dentist having an examination. So not just the cleaning, but actually getting to see the dentist and letting them have a look at what's going on inside your mouth could save a life. So on here we have some different images, like on my right here, there's a little lesion under the tongue. This is under the person's tongue. And if it's not hurting, the person may not notice that there's something wrong. But this lesion would need to be biopsied, so they have to cut out a little piece of it and test it to see whether it is cancerous. And cancer in the mouth is very, very common. It's actually one of the more common ones. And if it's caught early, you can have very good success. The person could go on to live a very long and full life after that diagnosis if it is caught early. If you only wait until it's hurting and then you decide to come in, usually at that point when the person is already aware, it could be too late. Or even if something can be done, it could leave the person very debilitated. Some major surgery, a lot of cutting out half of the person's tongue and part of the jaw, which it doesn't have to be that way. If we could just regularly go in, then even if you haven't noticed something, the dentist could notice something and get you on the right path for treatment. So this is right in the corner of the mouth. This is a cancerous lesion. Same right here on the lip. Not everything we see is cancer, but it's better to check it out. If it's noticed, we have it dealt with, have a biopsy, get it tested, make sure it's fine. If it's nothing, fine. If it is something, then we're on the path towards getting it dealt with. So what I would really like you to take away from what I'm saying today is, please go to the dentist regularly. Don't wait until something is hurting before you decide to go. So that's my number one misconception. I don't need the dentist unless something is hurting, and then I go. So the next misconception that I wanted to talk about was, I don't need to remove my wisdom teeth unless my wisdom teeth are hurting me. And again, in oral health, by the time something is hurting, it could be way too late. As far as the wisdom tooth goes, if there's an issue with the wisdom tooth, if you wait until the wisdom tooth is decayed, I don't really care, because we were going to take it out anyway. So if that's the one that has the issue, then it's fine. But what tends to happen when there's a wisdom tooth, especially on the bottom, that's badly positioned, it tends to rot the tooth right beside it. So not like on the x-ray to the right, not the one that's lying down, but the one that's vertical, the good one. We can see it on both sides on this x-ray. So you have your wisdom teeth that are almost horizontal, and right beside it, there's a cavity on the tooth that it's leaning up against. And in this case, it often happens that by the time the person realizes, oh, something is hurting, it's way too late for this tooth. The vertical one, which is the good one, may end up needing a root canal. So instead of a simple filling, it needs a root canal. But sometimes the cavity is so low below the gum line that we can't even fix it. And you end up losing that tooth because of a useless horizontal one that should have been removed a long time ago. And as we wait and we get older, the bone also gets denser, and the removal may be the same. It may not be more difficult, but it could be. But the recovery is also more difficult. If you're comparing having your wisdom teeth removed when you're 20 to having your wisdom teeth removed when you're 50, there's a big difference. The recovery is very different. You will eventually recover, but why not do it early? Why wait until something else is damaged that didn't need to be damaged, all because of a useless extra tooth? If the wisdom teeth are fine, if they grow in normally and vertically like all the other teeth, then that doesn't need to be. They don't need to be removed. But if they're not fully grown, like in the middle picture, where the wisdom tooth is there, it didn't come in fully, there's gum still covering it. This is not beneficial to anybody. It doesn't help you to keep it. It can't chew properly. What it does do is harbor bacteria under the gum. There's a permanent low-grade infection going on there. There's pus draining, but you won't see it because it's oozing out. What you are doing is drinking it all day long, this pus that's dripping out of the from around the wisdom tooth, and that can't be helpful. So to that idea that if my wisdom tooth isn't hurting, even though it's badly positioned, I don't need to remove it, I would say, please remember what I've said. And if you fall into that situation, then you should take steps to get get them removed, get them dealt with, and the sooner the better. Nowadays, if you don't want to sit in the chair and have it done awake, you can put to sleep, or sedated where you're not asleep but you're happy and you don't care. You could do that, and it works out really well. And the teeth that remain, you can look after them better. You can have a nice healthy mouth. These ones harbor a lot of bacteria, and we have a lot of bacteria in our mouth, about 6 billion, so a whole world population living in our mouth. But when you have these situations where you can't get in and clean, then you get more bacteria, and they also are of the more dangerous type, as opposed to the type of bacteria, the bacterial population that you would see in a mouth that didn't have this going on. So to recap, why should I see the dentist even though I don't feel anything? Remember, for prevention, to catch things early, you want to go regularly. Why should I remove my wisdom teeth even though they're not hurting? They may not hurt, but that doesn't mean that they're not causing damage. And the third thing I wanted to bring up was, why should I floss? I brush my teeth every single day. I brush them well. Why do you guys go on and on about flossing? And the thing with that is, no matter how well you brush, even if you're a perfect brusher, you're never going to be able to clean in between your teeth ever. If that's all you do, if all you do is floss, if all you do is brush, sorry, because the toothbrush cannot get in between the teeth. The toothbrush can only clean where the toothbrush can go, and that is on the surfaces that it can touch, but it can't go in between, so it's not going to clean in between. But yet that plaque that we're trying to remove does go everywhere. And if you don't floss it, it just stays in there and builds up and builds up. And after 48 hours of staying there, the plaque starts to harden and become calculus, which is what you see here. It's not that this person doesn't brush their teeth. They do, but the toothbrush is skipping these areas, and the person isn't flossing either. So it's building up in between the teeth. And so if you don't floss for a week, it's building up in there for a week or a month or a year or 2 or 5 or 10 or however long. And this calculus is full of bacteria. The plaque is full of bacteria, and then the calculus is the calcified plaque. And it's full of bacteria, and the bacteria would do one of two things, or it can do one of two things. Either cause gum disease, or this plaque that's staying on the teeth would cause decay. As we get older, we're less prone to decay. An average healthy person is less prone to decay, but we tend to be more prone to gum issues. So we still need to floss and clean in between our teeth. So adults tend to lose their teeth more to gum disease than to decay. A healthy adult. And flossing, either with the long string, you can do your flossing with that, or with the little floss picks. You can use that. But we also have there's also, sorry, I'm not quite there yet. Yes, there's also a water flossers. So these have been around for a little while, but there have been studies done, and more recently, and more studies that show that this this actually works. So it's a little power washer for the mouth. I put up Waterpik because Waterpik they're the company that made the first to make water flossers. And now you have a lot of other people making them, but as of now, most of the other ones are not as effective. The only one that I would say I know for sure works is this one, the Waterpik. And so you could use this instead of flossing. And it does work really well. I use one myself, and I'm very satisfied with what it does. So you aim it at the gums and you go around from the outside and around from the inside, and you can regulate the pressure of the water. And it does blast away the plaque that you would have, that collects around the teeth and even can go under the gum line and do that too. So for people who have gum disease and where the pockets around the teeth are deep enough that your floss wouldn't be able to get all the way down there, this Waterpik is very useful. So I would recommend that. So to those that say I brush well, I don't need to floss, or why should I floss? That's your answer. You need to floss so that you can keep your teeth. As we get older, apparently, and I'm slowly getting there, apparently a lot of the other pleasures in life grow dim. We're not as excited about some of the things that we were excited about in our 20s and 30s. But one thing that remains that people still love, even well into their old age, is to be able to enjoy their food. And you can't easily enjoy your food if you do not have teeth to enjoy your food with. So to be able to enjoy your old age, you got to have teeth. And to have teeth in your old age, you got to look after them when you're younger, before you get there, so that the teeth will get to old age with you. And to avoid gum disease, of course, we all know that we need to brush, but flossing is the one that tends to be more of an issue. And I would say, set a reminder. You're going to try to make this a habit. Set a reminder so that you can do this at least once a day, and that will help to keep your mouth healthy. So with that, I would like to say thank you. I have said the things that are very dear to my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bolo Kamara. I'm sure I was not the only one. When you were going through some of those slides, I was cringing over here. But thank you for sharing all of that information. Just to set expectations, Dr. Bolo Kamara, excuse me, is accepting new patients. We're going to have her information loaded on our website after this presentation. She has an office in the North York area and another one in the Brampton area. So like she has said, there is no excuse for you not to pop in to see her to make sure that your picture does not end up on one of these slides. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I know we're pushing ahead of time. I want to thank you all for your patience. Thank you so very much. We have just 2 more presenters to go before our breakout room session. The next person we're going to have hop on is Ravinder. He is an investment planning specialist with CIBC. So just to give you a little bit of background, I think at the start of the year, CIBC will reach out to some of its members to say, hey, what are your goals for this year? So unfortunately, he got me when he called and he said, so what are going to be your goals for this year? And I was like, funny you should ask me. I have an audience I would love for you to present to. I want to thank him so very much for his willingness, his adaptability, just making sure that today was a success. He does happen to have been working in the investment industry since 2002. He helps clients in both high value and mass fluent markets. He's been with CIBC for almost 10 years, and he's held various financial planning and advisory positions over the past 20 years. He currently holds a personal financial planning designation, and he has a passion for helping clients achieve their goals, such as education, retirement, and saving for their first-time home ownership. So on that note, we are going to have Rav come up. Rav, are you here with us?
I am. Thank you so much for that introduction, Franchetta. Very kind of you. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Rav Bajwa. I'm the investment planning specialist for the Mississauga-Etobicoke region and also within the wider Ontario region. And what I do is I work with clients much like yourself to provide freedom, security, peace of mind, knowing you're on track to reach your goals. Your goal could be as something simple as providing educational support for a child, their eventual desire or goal to become a doctor. Maybe you're considering buying your first home, a second investment property. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to earn a tax efficient income from your corporation. So for those self-employed individuals. So today's conversation, I'm going to be highlighting and this is again from the Canadian perspective. I understand that we have a group from a wide variety of different backgrounds. So I am speaking again from the Canadian perspective, the accounts and different investment vehicles available here in Canada. We'll be highlighting the different tax deferred and tax sheltered accounts and how you can grow your money on either short-term basis for some of your short-term goals or longer term for some of your longer term goals. So let's get started. I'm going to share something here on the screen. Okay. So first and foremost, high level, there are three types of accounts that we have here in Canada,
I'm sorry are you sharing? Because right now I don't see where.
Oh, my apologies. 1 second here.
Nusente, can you stop your screen share, please? That might be what's impeding him from being able. Oh, awesome. You're good now, Rav. We can see you.
Okay. Okay. Can you folks see that there?
Yes, we can. You're good to go. Thank you.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. Sorry about the little technical hiccup. Okay. So the three types of accounts that we have here in Canada that would allow you to save either on a tax deferred or a tax sheltered basis would be the tax-free savings account, the RRSP, which I'll get into sort of the details in a moment, and then the newly introduced first-time homebuyer savings account. So with the tax-free savings account and the RSP, as I've indicated previously, the tax-free savings account is an account that you can use towards any one of your goals. So for those individuals that are looking to save for the purchase of a new car, or they're looking to save for the down payment on an investment property, or you're looking to start your own business, you can save within the tax-free savings account. And as the name indicates, tax-free savings account, meaning any growth that you have within the account. So in Canada, there's three forms of investment income: interest income, dividend income, and capital gains. Now, had those investments been sitting in a traditional non-registered account, meaning that there's no tax sheltering with that type of account, then you would have to pay taxes on interest income, dividend income, and capital gain. Now, if those funds were in a TFSA respectively, there's absolutely no such tax liability to you. Even when you withdraw the funds, again, there is no tax liability to you. Now, if we compare this to an RSP, unlike an RSP, you get a tax deduction. And what that means is that, let's say, for example, hypothetically, you have a earned income of $100,000 on an annual basis. Now, in Canada, fortunately or unfortunately, you have to pay tax on that income. The Canadian government has provided a tax deduction benefit through the RSP. So what that means is that, let's say, for example, with your $100,000 income, you've made a contribution of $20,000. The government's going to recognize that as a tax deduction, meaning they will effectively deduct $20,000 from your $100,000. You will be effectively taxed on $80,000, bringing down your tax rate here in Canada. We work on a harmonized tax rate, meaning that your tax rate would be effectively lowered. Okay. Again, TFSA, just emphasize that TFSA unfortunately does not have that provision. However, there are different provisions within the RSP that allow you to remove the money on a tax-free basis. The first one is being lifelong learning plan. If you decide to withdraw money up to $10,000, lifetime maximum $20,000 if you decide to do any postgraduate work, PhD, etc. The second and most popular reason, one of the most popular benefits, is the first-time home buyers plan. You can withdraw up to $35,000. If you have a spouse or partner, your spouse and partner can also withdraw up to $35,000 respectively in their name. Now, with these funds, withdrawal of these funds does have to be paid back 1/15 over 15 years. Whereas with the TFSA, there's no such provision to have to pay the funds back. Okay. And most importantly, and last but certainly not least, you can withdraw monies for the RSP, as the name acronym indicates, Registered Retirement Savings Plan, inevitably when you reach retirement age in Canada. So the traditional retirement age is 65. You can take out funds before or afterwards. You will pay tax on these funds, but the hope is by the time that you reach age 65, you're no longer maybe working as many hours, or maybe you're potentially not working at all. So your tax rate effectively has lowered, and hence the terminology that I've used, a tax deferral system, a tax deferral vehicle versus a tax shelter in the tax-free savings account. With the tax-free savings account, there is an age restriction in that you have to be a Canadian resident. And I say, again, Canadian resident, if you are on a work program or if you are a student, you are on a PR, it doesn't make a difference. As long as you're a Canadian resident of the age of majority, 18 years or older, you can contribute to the tax-free savings account. With the RSP, the main benefit is tax deductibility. Again, if you're a student and you're not making income, the RSP wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So for those individuals that are earning income, RSP contributions do make sense. Moving along, we've introduced, not CIBC, but the government has introduced a new account in the form of the first-time home buyer savings account. This account is explicitly meant for those individuals that are looking to purchase a house. It's a new type of account, which is a registered plan, and it brings the best of both the RSP and tax-free savings accounts together. Meaning, if you are looking to make a contribution, you can contribute $8,000 per year, up to a maximum of $40,000. You will get a tax deduction on any contributions, very similar to the RSP. The nice thing about this, unlike an RSP, and very similar to a tax-free savings account, any funds used for the purchase of your first home, you do not have to pay those funds back. Again, very similar to a tax-free savings account. So how do you qualify to open a first-time home buyer savings account? So again, you're a Canadian resident and you've reached the age of majority, which would be 18 in your respective province or territory. You're eligible to purchase your first home, which you have not lived in a qualifying home in the current or past 4 calendar years. From the perspective, again, a couple of other tax benefits. Your tax-free FHSA, first-time home buyer savings account contributions can reduce your taxable income. And any investment income in your first-time home buyer savings account, very similar to the tax-free savings account, investment income, dividend income in the form of investment income in the form of interest income, dividend income, or capital gains is non-taxable while it's in your account and when you withdraw. So meaning that you can invest in different stocks, GICs, bonds, etc., which I'll touch on here in just a moment. And if you are saving for the first home, so first time purchase of your first home, again, you pay no taxes upon withdrawal when you do use the FHSA towards the purchase of your first qualifying home. And how do you do withdrawals, or how do you qualify for withdrawals? You're a Canadian resident and a first-time home buyer. At the time of withdrawal, you have an agreement to buy and or build a qualifying home. So usually people, when they're buying in the market, proof of that would be a purchase and sale agreement, which you would get from the realtor, and it's an agreement essentially to purchase or sell your property, or purchase your property in this case. And you intend to occupy the home as your principal residence within the first year of acquiring the property. Okay. Any other questions that we may have? I think we'll have a little bit of time for breakout rooms and a breakout session just shortly, so we can answer those at that time. Last piece I wanted to touch on very briefly, now that I've highlighted the different accounts that we do have, wanted to highlight a little bit about the structure of the market and how this applies to you and your specific goals. So when we make any recommendations here at CIBC, again, we always put an emphasis in terms of what your goals are and what your goals look like. And the reason for this, imagine if your goal is to purchase a house within the next 6 months. So we would want to look at something very conservative, potentially something guaranteed. For example, a GIC, which is a principal secured type of investment, as the name indicates, acronym GIC, Guaranteed Investment Certificate, because we do not want those funds to fluctuate between now and the time that you purchase your home. Now, let's say, for example, you have maybe 15 or 10 years between now and retirement. Then we could potentially look at some opportunities based on your specific tolerance for market fluctuations, volatility, and for risk as to how we can potentially grow your funds between now and the time of retirement, or for that matter, whatever your goals are. So here we see a visual representation of an index chart, and this shows all the different markets, how they performed since the 1930s until the end of 2023. Now, end of 2022. We're not going to worry too much about the early portion of the chart, the 30s, 40s, 50s. We're going to kind of focus on year 2008, 2009 until the end of last year. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. I'm going to slide to the side. I'll just zoom in just a touch more. Okay. So if we start off on the top line, we have US stocks, growth portfolios, Canadian stocks, and then balanced portfolios. Let me start off in Canadian stocks since we live in Canada. So this line here, this line beside Canadian stocks represents the Canadian markets, blue chip dividend paying, some of them dividend paying companies like CIBC Bank, the other Canadian banks, some of the Canadian insurance companies, Enbridge. So companies that have seen a lot of market fluctuations over the past, well, in the case of CIBC, 150 years plus. CIBC is 150 plus years old. It's actually older than Canada, in fact. Now, if we focus purely on Canada, to invest in Canada would be a little bit short-sighted. And the reason being, if we take a look at the world's entire GDP, so if you think of the entire world's economy as a pie, Canada only represents 2% of that pie. The reason being, our markets purely focus on two sectors, financials and energy. So we want to ensure that we're diversifying not only through Canada, but other different geographical allocations. So if we move up the scale here to US stocks, for example, on this line, this is where you're going to find great growth companies, companies that have had a huge amount of growth over the last 10, 15 years. For example, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. So companies that have done phenomenally well over the past, again, 10, 15, 20 years. Now, looking at the lines here, we can conclude markets do not move up or down in a linear fashion. They flow and ebb depending on what's happening in the economy. Case in point, if we go back further to 2008, 2009, everybody may or may not remember 2008, 2009, we had the largest crisis or correction in our market. It was a credit crisis. And we had the largest market correction in our living history. The largest ever was the Great Depression. I don't think anybody here on the conference today, seminar today, was around during the Great Depression. Second largest ever was the credit crisis. Now imagine if someone didn't invest any more money at that time. They said, you know what, never again. They would have missed out on all this opportunity, this upside opportunity, the last 13 years, 14 years. Now, since then, we've had a couple of small market action on the downturn, on the downside. So case in point, COVID back in 2020, small little blip there. And most recently, we've had this little slide here, and that was as a result of sudden rise in interest rates. Again, this line here on the top, I don't know if everybody can see that here. That line represents Bank of Canada's interest rate. So all of a sudden, we had a sudden rise in 2022. 7 out of the 9 meetings Bank of Canada had, they increased interest rates. The reason being to control a little guy known as inflation. So all the way on the opposite end here, we see inflation. Now, inflation, we know, something that is not tangible. We can't touch it, feel it. We can't see it, but we know it's there. Now, some good news came out this past Monday. Inflation has decreased from the month of December to the month of January. It's always 1 month lagging. So it's dropped 0.5%, which is fairly significant. So now for the month of January, it's sitting at 2.9%. Now, the disconnect that many of my clients have, especially those clients that have potentially longer term goals or maybe even medium term goals, that's wonderful, Rav, that inflation sitting at 2.9%. My issue is when I go to the grocery store, when I go to the gas pump, or maybe many of you may be experiencing this, I'm going out to buy my first home or maybe an investment property. Those prices are not reflective of 2.9%. In many cases, it's significantly higher than that. Just to put some context into this, my parents, I've lived in Mississauga here. It's a city here in Canada, in Ontario, to be more specific. My parents bought their first property in Mississauga for $50,000 in the late 70s. The average home in Mississauga now is sitting at about $1 million. That is the impact of inflation. So ideally, we would want to try to keep you above 2.9 and not below 2.9, because if you're below 2.9, you're effectively losing money. What I mean by that, you may see in your checking account, your savings account, no, what are you talking about, Rav? My balance is not decreasing. You're correct, it's not decreasing. However, if you take those same funds and you try to go and purchase goods and services a year from now, those funds effectively will purchase less goods and services. And that is unfortunately due to inflation. Last area I wanted to touch on here was bonds. So bonds compared to stocks. First off, what is a bond? Type of investment instrument that can be issued by a corporation, such as CIBC or government, federal government, provincial governments, even world governments. For example, many of you may have heard of US bonds. Bonds, unlike stocks, they're much more conservative. However, bonds and interest rates have an inverse relationship, meaning as interest rates go up, bond prices can and will come down. And you can see here, we've seen a unique phenomena I've seen in my first time in my 20-year career history. Both stocks and bonds for a very short period were both down at the same time. So just to summarize, there are many different options you can take advantage of investing in the market. Shorter term, more conservative options you can take advantage of in your FHSA account, first time home buyer savings account, tax-free savings account, and RSP account. Is just a matter of what you like to accomplish. How long of a time frame do you have to accomplish those different goals and ambitions you may have, and how CIBC effectively can help you reach your goals safely and efficiently. That's it from myself, Franchetta. Back to you.
Thank you so very much, Rav. Very informative. Thank you. We appreciate you sharing all of this. We look forward to the breakout room session. I'm sure you're going to have a whole lot more. But just to set expectations for my Canadian counterparts, Rav actually works out of the CIBC branch on Robert Speck in Mississauga. If you want to have and get to hear more about this, see how you can begin to build on your portfolio, it's never too late. Then by all means, schedule a meeting with him. We'll have all of that information linked to the website by end of day today. So we're actually doing good on time. I want to thank you so very much for your patience, what you've gotten to hear here today. We've received some really good reviews in the chat. What we're going to do now is to have our last speaker that is going to be presenting, and then we will have the vote of thanks. We'll take a short break, and then you are more than welcome to come back and join us in the breakout session. The way that breakout session will work, each presenter here today, other than Christopher, will be leading a room. And so if you have questions, you have concerns, whether it be from the Sound Wallet, the Sound Mind, or the Sound Body perspective, you can pop into any one of those breakout rooms and pose your questions to get answers to them. So our last speaker happens to be one of my favorite family members, Uncle Bossady. His name is John Henry Coker. He's married to my aunt. So he is a visionary. When my sister and I, when we arrived in Texas, we had the privilege of living in his home. And so what he would tell us, this is a man that sleeps for less than 4 hours a night. So he's always up. He's always doing something, reading the paper, listening to the news. So if you were living in that house, you had no choice, but you had to push. So he would tell us that where I have not gone, and he's gone far, you have to go. And so in my mind, I would be thinking, who can scale heights higher than what you've done? So I do want to introduce Mr. John Henry Coker. He's been in management for over 30 years. He was also a licensed life insurance professional. He's currently retired. He resides in Houston, Texas with his wife, Moria, and the rest of his family. So Uncle Baside, are you on? Did we lose?
Yes, Francetta, I'm on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me go ahead and share your screen. Before I do that, let me just place you as the spotlight. So here he is, and let me share the screen for you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Francetta. I feel honored to be here today to share some of my own life experiences with the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, I will get right into it. I'm the last but not the least. And again, literally, this is the last document that you will prepare in your lifetime. So probably it is fitting that I'm the last speaker. So with that said, my presentation here is get your affairs in order. The very first thing, and that's one of those things that we have to do is, of course, the will, which is our last will. It is stated that it's the last will and testament. Before I do that, I just want to make a short disclaimer that this presentation cannot and does not contain legal advice. And also, the information provided is for general information and educational purposes only, and not a substitute for professional advice. Accordingly, before taking any actions, please, 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 I encourage you to consult with your attorney, your financial advisor, your banker, and possibly your estate planner. So with that said, let's go on to what is a will. A will, or a last will and testament, is a legal document that describes how you would like your property and other assets to be distributed after your death. Again, that's the last thing we always put that on the shelf at the back of our minds. We do all other preparations during our lifetime and leave the will to the last item. And then, of course, sometimes we end up not making a will. Of course, when you make a will, you can also use it to nominate guardians for your children. That is dependent children under 18 or even pets. Now, what is the purpose of a will? Everyone over the age of 18 should and must have a will. If you have any sort of savings, investments, property or dependents, cars, jewelry, pets, digital assets like Bitcoins, NFTs, coin collection, art collections, stamp collections, and even your collection of clothing, you have to have a will. In the absence of a will, your assets will be distributed according to state laws and courts. And sometimes your assets will be distributed in the way you do not want. So it is important that we do have a will. There have been stories of siblings fighting over assets until one of them passed away, and case still in court and has not been resolved. Of course, the courts will take a much longer time, sometimes years, for somebody that dies without a will, which is called dying, without a will is called intestate. And your assets will be in limbo while your loved ones suffer. Steps for creating a will. First of all, you have to, international wills, of course. With international wills, some of us who have properties in Sierra Leone and in other countries and are living in the diaspora, do not think that you can only make a will here. You have to make a will in Sierra Leone or in other countries that conform to the laws of that country. So please take note of that as well. Now, what are the steps for creating a will? First of all, we have to take an inventory of all our assets, everything from home to personal items. Again, don't forget your digital assets. You also have to choose a beneficiary, and that's someone you trust who will act in your best interest, because that person basically, in financial terms, acts as a fiduciary for you, which will be the person with the best interest for you and your family, and to make sure that your assets are distributed to the people that you want them to go to. Once you've selected an executor, you have to decide who you will have to appoint as a guardian for your young children. Again, if something should happen to you, if you have children under the age of 18, you would want to appoint guardians. And you would not want the courts to appoint somebody that you may not want your kids to go to, or would bring up your kids for you in your absence. And you have to be explicit also when you are providing your will. You have to have names spelled correctly, be explicit, and be detailed as to avoid any form of ambiguity. You also have to sign and notarize your will with a witness. Now, even handwritten wills have to be notarized and witnessed. Yes, people do write their wills by hand, which is their last instructions for their assets. And finally, you have to put your will in a safe place, preferably a fireproof safe at home, at a bank, in a safety deposit box, or you keep and also a copy should be kept by your executor. Now, once you've prepared your will, you have to make sure that you update your will, and typically done every 3 to 5 years, or after a divorce. As you know, sometimes stories have been out there wherein somebody has had a divorce and did not update their will. And of course, the ex-wife or ex-spouse has made claims to those assets. So to avoid that, you want to make sure you update your will. Likewise, after a marriage, birth of a child also, so that that child cannot be left out of your assets. The death of a beneficiary also is one of those instances where you have to update your will. For example, if you come into a lot of money after your will has been made, say you win the lottery or something else, and you are bequeathed maybe $10,000 to that beneficiary, and that beneficiary passes away, then who should that money go to? You have to determine whether that money goes back into your estate or to survival of that beneficiary. Otherwise, the court will have to decide on that for you. Okay, now we move on. There are other documents that do accompany the will, and these are very important documents. The first one is the HIPAA authorization. As you know, that's the law in the United States, wherein I'm not sure if the same law exists in Canada. If you do not appoint somebody who is authorized has the HIPAA authorization, then what happens? That even your spouse, if they do not have your HIPAA authorization, they cannot access your medical records, especially so after, in the case you're suffering from an irreversible illness, wherein you're not able to make decisions for yourself. You also have a living will, which has to specify preferences for healthcare and medical treatment. That includes going into a nursing home or even medical treatment by your physician. A power of attorney, you have several types of power of attorney. You have a power of attorney that can be given to someone, an agent, to manage your personal and financial affairs if you are away or you are incapacitated. You also have a medical power of attorney, or it can be a directive, a physician's directive, or directive to physicians and family or surrogates, or advance directives. This includes things like DNR. If you are suffering from irreversible ailment and you just want them to just keep you comfortable and stop all medication, that has to be in writing. There have been instances again where there has been tussle and turn between spouses and other members of the family as to what type of treatment or what decisions have to be made for somebody who is either incapacitated or unable to make a medical decision or suffering from an irreversible condition. In addition, your funeral wishes also should be included as an accompanying document. Again, I've seen the case wherein people pass away and sometimes family members want that person to be interred in one country, and maybe the wife would have said, oh, this person told me that if I pass away, I need to be buried in Sierra Leone or in another country. And then again, there is a tussle and turning going on there. And of course, things will drag on. So it's important that that is stated in writing. Of course, provision of a burial site or burial, if there's a burial cemetery plots available, then that too needs to be taken into account, and that would save the family from purchasing alternative burial services or plots. Now, we have to move on to typically you cannot use your will. These are the instances where you cannot use your will. Life insurance, 401k plans and assets, pension plan assets, retirement plan assets, annuities, property held in a trust, matrimonial home held jointly. All these documents, when you first establish them, you would have specified a beneficiary, and these beneficiaries supersede whatever you write in your will. So for example, your life insurance policy, whoever is the beneficiary there will collect the money once they provide the insurance company with your death certificate as well as their identification. That will not go through the will. So please make note that these have to be updated as well. In case of life changes like marriage, divorce, those have to be adhered to. Bank accounts can also be designated as TOD or POD. And these will not go into a will. Once you've gone to your bank and you've designated that, hoping that you and your wife or your significant other are in a good place, then you can add them as TOD to your bank account. So if something should happen to you when you pass away, that money will immediately be provided to that person rather than having to wait for a probate. Other than that, nobody will have access to that money until the court decides. So please think about that. Finally, there are two documents, final documents that you can do. The wills versus trust. You can either write a will or you can do both. The wills, of course, is your final document that will have to go through a probate, whilst a trust does not go through a probate. and the will is going to affect when the person passes away. And trust can also be established while you are alive. You have different types of trust, which I won't go into. I will leave that up to you to check with your attorney or your estate planner or financial planner to see what you can do to go about setting up a trust. But there are some advantages of a trust in the sense that the trust allows flexibility. It will be automatically, whoever is the beneficiary will take hold of that trust without having to go through a probate. Because sometimes probate can last, if there is a will, can last up to, several months, 6 to 9 months. Without a trust, without a will, probate court, your probate property of your assets can last for years. So it is important that we look at these two types of documents and then see which is most suitable for your situation. This is all I have for, and I hope that this presentation has prompted you to start the conversation to make sure that your loved ones get the benefits of your hard-earned assets after you are gone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. John Henry Coker. We appreciate you. Good information, and I know you're going to keep us in line. Thank you, thank you, thank you again for making time for us. So now we are going to have the vote of thanks done by Mrs. Karina Johnson-Bear. She's going to be doing the vote of thanks. We'll take a short break and we'll put the time in the chat when we will resume and when the breakout rooms will commence. Okay, we can see you if you go ahead, Mrs. Bayo.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the executive and members of the Methodist Girls High School Olga's Association Ontario chapter, let me take this opportunity to thank you for accepting our invitation to join us in this virtual presentation on health and wellness. Without your presence here today, this event would not have had such a successful outcome. Special thanks to Dr. Fiona Strasser-King on internal medicine and cardiovascular disease, the #1 cause of death in the world, mainly in Black women than men, with emphasis on the risk factors and how they can be maintained. Next was Miss Doreen Jacobs for her insight on psychotherapy, physical, social, and mental well-being with risk factors which include genetics, relationships, anxiety, etc., etc. Mr. Christopher Ryan, a mortgage advisor, Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, as advising on income stability of the applicant, taking into account debts owed and how to get rid of these debts before applying for a mortgage, maintaining good credit, get advice from a mortgage advisor before closing. We had Miss Crystal McCaffey, certified trainer, spoke on preventing disease to maintain longevity. People who do not train lose 5 to 10% of their muscle mass per decade, causing difficulty in ADL's activity of daily living. We should therefore maintain a positive mind to stay healthy. Dr. Nusente Bolo-Kamara on dentistry spoke on misconceptions and the need for care. Regular visits to the dentist is of utmost importance as cavities cannot be easily detected by the individual. Failure to do so can result in high dental fees. Ravinda Bajwa, investments planning specialist, CIBC, provided information on investments available in Canada to to achieve short-term and long-term goals. That is TFSA, the Tax-Free Savings Account, RRSPs, and first-time home buyers savings account. Last but not least, Mr. John Henry Bosede Coker, retired licensed life insurance specialist, advised us on our affairs he spoke on how we should get our last will and testaments and should also take care of as in the absence of a will, assets will be distributed according to state laws and courts to prevent discord among family members. I am sure everyone here has benefited in one way or the other from these various disciplines, which I hope we will all take full advantage of to set our houses and health conditions, as well as last wishes, in order. Because of limited time at my disposal, please accept my thanks once again on behalf of our organization. I am sure that you will have no hesitation in supporting us at future events when the need arises and once called upon to do so. Once again, thanks to you all for your attendance here today. Wishing you all a lovely weekend, a lovely and productive weekend. And may God bless us all. Floriatem GHS.
Thank you so very much for those kind words. So we are going to break out now. We will actually resume at 4:15 p.m. for the breakout room session. So if you want to grab a drink of water, use